Hi everyone, Tracy DW here. Sudan's colonial history is complex and deeply tied to both Ottoman, Egyptian and British imperial ambitions in northeastern Africa. Before European colonisation, Sudan was home to several powerful kingdoms such as Nubia, the Funj Sultanate of Sennar and the Darfur Sultanate. But in 1821, Muhammad Ali Pasha, the Ottoman ruler of Egypt, invaded Sudan to expand his empire southward. This period of Egyptian Ottoman occupation lasted from 1821 to 1885 and saw Sudan governed by Egyptian officials under Ottoman oversight. Imposing heavy taxes, this administration traded in gold, ivory, and continued to engage in the slave trade well after Britain had banned it across its own empire in 1833. Sending enslaved Sudanese to Egypt and the Ottoman Empire. However, this administration remained weak, and widespread discontent and resistance arose, particularly because of harsh taxation and the abolition of local autonomy. This resistance culminated in a massive Islamic and anti-colonial revolt led by Muhammad Ahmad ibn Abd Allah, who proclaimed himself the Mahdi, the guided one. Mahdi's forces defeated the Egyptians and British at Khartoum in 1885. The Mahdist state, also known as the Mahdiya, was a theocratic and militarized regime which controlled much of Sudan until 1898. Although the Mahdiya united many Sudanese under a common religious banner, it struggled with internal divisions and famine. After defeating the Mahdist forces at the Battle of Omdurman in 1898, Britain and Egypt established the Anglo-Egyptian Condominium. This was characterised by the British dividing Sudan into the north, Muslim and Arabised, and the south, African and non-Muslim, restricting movement and interaction between the two. Investment in education was limited and uneven, with Christian missionaries encouraged in the south, while Islam thrived in the north, and this reinforced regional divisions. During this period, which lasted until 1956, Sudan's economic development focused on the Jazeera cotton scheme, which served British textile industries. So, although Sudan was officially ruled by both Britain and Egypt, in practice it was Britain who dominated and held real power. A political awakening and the path to independence for Sudan emerged from the 1940s, when nationalism surged and competing political visions emerged post-World War II. The vision of a union with Egypt was promoted by the pro-Egyptian elite, while Sudanese nationalists, especially those from the Umma Party, supported the vision for full independence. In 1953, Britain agreed to a transition to self-government, and on January the 1st, 1956, Sudan declared independence both from Britain and Egypt. Though it appears to be a textbook ending, British policies left a colonial legacy of separate administrations of North and South, concentrated economic development along the Nile Valley, and ethnic, religious and regional divides, all of which sowed the seeds for future civil wars from 1955 to 1972 and 1983 to 2005, and still shapes Sudanese politics to this day. After Sudan became independent, its internal divisions between the Arab Muslim North and the African Christian animist South quickly resurfaced. Disagreements over federalism, religion, and the distribution of power paralysed politics with frequent changes of government. 5 prime ministers in 8 years brought much political instability. In 1969, Colonel Jafar Namiri seized power in a coup, ending parliamentary rule. Even before independence, southern soldiers mutinied against northern domination, starting the First Sudanese Civil War from 1955 to 1972. From 1969 to 1985, Namiri's regime introduced socialist policies, nationalising industries, and aligned Sudan with Egypt's Gamal Abdel Nasser. In 1972, the Addis Ababa Agreement ended the First Civil War by granting the South regional autonomy, but by the start of the 1980s, Namiri turned toward political Islam, influenced by Hassan al-Turabi and the Muslim Brotherhood. By 1983, Southern autonomy was abolished, reimposing central control, and the introduction of Sharia law sparked rebellion in the south again, and the Second Sudanese Civil War, 1983 to 2005, began, led by the Sudan People's Liberation Army, the SPLA, under John Garang. As a result, the Namiri regime was overthrown in 1985 after mass protests and economic crisis. From 1985 to 1986, a military council under General Abdel Rahman Swar al-Dahab briefly ruled Sudan, restoring democracy, and the 1986 elections confirmed Sadiq al-Mahdi from the Umma party as Prime Minister. However, this government failed to end the civil war or fix the economy, and peace talks with the SPLA stalled. The 1989 coup by Colonel Omar al-Bashir, backed by Islamist ideologue Hassan al-Turabi, seized power, forming the National Islamic Front, the NIF. Here, all political parties were banned, and Sharia law was expanded even to non-Muslim areas. As the civil war intensified, millions became displaced, and from 2003, government-backed militars carried out ethnic cleansing across the region of Darfur, Western Sudan, killing 300,000 people. In the late 1990s, oil exports brought revenue, but wealth was concentrated in the regime's hands. The US placed sanctions in 1997, and in 2009, the International Criminal Court indicted Bashir for war crimes and genocide. In 2005, a comprehensive peace agreement ended the North-South Civil War, creating a power-sharing government between Bashir's regime and the SPLA. This gave the South autonomy again and the right to a referendum on independence. In 2011, South Sudan declared independence, taking with it most of Sudan's oil reserves. However, Sudan faced economic collapse and new conflicts flared up along the Blue Nile, South Kordofan, and Darfur. Protests erupted over bread and fuel prices, and massive civil disobedience led to Bashir being ousted in April 2019 after 3 decades in power. Post-Bashir government marked a brief transition period between 2019 and 2021 with the formation of a civilian military transitional council. and Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok led reforms aiming for democracy. Peace deals were signed with several rebel groups. However, the military remained powerful and resistant to full civilian control, and by 2021, another coup, this time led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and his deputy Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, dissolved the civilian government. Tensions between Burhan's Sudanese Armed Forces, or SAF, and Dagalo's Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, exploded into open war in April 2023, with fighting devastating Khartoum and Darfur and other regions. To date, this conflict has caused one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, with millions displaced and widespread famine. After 7 decades of brief attempts to transition into democracy, with political and economic instability, famine, conflict, and indictments of genocide, what are the statistics on Sudan? According to the United Nations Office, UNICEF and the World Health Organization, approximately 30.4 million people in Sudan require humanitarian assistance in 2025, which is around 65% of the population. Over 15 million children are in need of humanitarian support. Some 24 million people face acute food insecurity, and famine has already been confirmed in several areas, for example in parts of North Darfur, and more areas are at risk. There are around 11.3 million internally displaced persons in Sudan. Millions also have fled across borders into neighbouring states, but precise up-to-date figures vary. The health system is under huge strain. 4.9 million children under 5 and pregnant or lactating women are acutely malnourished. Huge funding gaps are also present. For example, the 2025 humanitarian response in Sudan has had major shortfalls. As I write this podcast episode on Remembrance Day, how can we remember the past but fail to acknowledge the present? Why does the world fall silent when it comes to Sudan? And how could the UK and the West influence the end of the current conflict? If you liked this podcast, then stay on this listening platform, click the subscribe button and check out my other episodes related to this one, such as Colonialism on Your Doorstep from the first season and Colonialism, Just a Thing of the Past, parts 1 and 2 from the 4th. And don't forget what I call the heart and soul of the Stories to be Told movement, my stories or poetic narratives, Caribbean Wind, Caribbean Rush, Knights at the Round Table, the Berlin Conference 1884, and Gone with the Wind, Macmillan's Speech for Change. These are all available on the website in paperback, on Amazon in Kindle format and in ebook format at Apple Books and all other digital platforms. And also the publication of the latest 4 titles. Now, if you want to find out more, just visit storiestobetold.com and check out the learning platforms for The Journey's End, Giving Back Hong Kong, Bite from the Big Apple, A Story for New York, Hope for Zimbabwe, Arise the Phoenix, and A Story for South Africa. And we're marking the beginning of Season 6 with a special shout out and thank you to Vineet and the entire team at Million Podcasts. We're making an announcement that Stories to be Told, the podcast series, has been recognised as one of the top 10 British Empire podcasts on the web by the Million Podcast panel. We are also being featured in their top 25 history teacher podcasts, and top 60 history podcasts for students. Just check out the links in the show notes. And if you'd like to sign up to my email list, just visit the website where you can opt in and receive your free samples of my first 4 titles. And finally, remember that you can also send me an audio message on the SpeakPipe link, which is also in the show notes, so don't be a stranger. Feel free to like, follow and share us on social media when you visit the website. Just click onto whichever social media link you would like to follow us on. And, as always, it's a pleasure and a privilege to share my learning journey with you in this podcast series, and I encourage you to either begin or continue your own. History is a matter of fact or perspective. I'm Tracy DW, and this is a Stories to be Told podcast. Stay safe, stay well, stay blessed. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next